below. Share your story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more life lessons like this. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a story can save a life. Thank you for listening, and may God protect you all. They didn't even wait for the body to be found. I heard it through a nurse's phone 2 floors below intensive care. My son's voice sharp and eager. Dad's plane went down. Finally, time to liquidate everything. Then laughter, cold relieved laughter, like I'd been a debt he'd been waiting to write off. But he celebrated too soon. He didn't know I was still lucky enough to survive and heard every single word he said. Hello, dear listeners. Thank you for joining me today. Before I begin my story, I would be grateful if you could subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me which state or country you're listening from. It always warms my heart to see how far our stories travel. Please enjoy listening. They didn't even wait for the body to be found. I heard it through a nurse's phone 2 floors below intensive care. My son's voice sharp and eager. Dad's plane went down. Finally, time to liquidate everything. Then laughter. Cold, relieved laughter, like I'd been a debt he'd been waiting to write off. He celebrated too soon. I heard every word. The pain came first, not from broken bones, though I had plenty of those. This was the kind that starts in your chest and spreads like winter through your veins. White ceiling tiles. 23 of them. I counted twice. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, steady and indifferent. Machines beeped. Something plastic pressed against my face. Oxygen. My lungs burned with each breath. Harborview Medical Center. The sign on the wall confirmed it. Seattle. Intensive Care Unit. March. The plane, the descent, the cold. It came back in fragments. I'd been flying back from Montana, a solo fishing trip I took every spring since Elizabeth died. The small charter plane had carried 6 of us. I was in the back row when the engine died. Then we dropped. I remembered trees rushing up, the sound of impact. Then nothing. But I was here. Alive. My ribs felt like shattered glass. Right leg in a cast, left arm too. Gauze wrapped thick around my head. I didn't need a mirror to know I looked like hell. That's when I heard it. Nurse Lisa had left her phone on the counter just outside my half-open door. She'd stepped out for linens. The phone was on speaker. I don't think she meant for it to be. And then I heard my son's voice. Archer, 42, real estate developer, the boy I'd taught to fish. The kid who fell asleep on my shoulder during Mariners games. The man who'd learned to look at me like an obligation. Dad's plane went down, he said. His voice was steady, clear, not shaken. They found wreckage in the Rockies. He was on the manifest. A woman's voice responded, I'm so sorry, Archer. Yeah, he said, but his tone didn't match the word. It's been coming. He was 71. Refused to stop these solo trips. Then he said it. Finally, time to liquidate everything. The house in Queen Anne is worth at least $850. I've already got a buyer interested. And then he laughed, not bitter, not sad, relieved, like a burden had lifted. I tried to move, to shout, but my body wouldn't cooperate. All I could do was listen. You're moving fast, the woman said. No point waiting, Archer replied. I'm trustee on the living trust. I can start liquidating now. Clear out the old stuff, donate what's worthless, sell the rest. Liquidate, donate, sell. He wasn't talking about a house. He was talking about my life. The home Elizabeth and I built. The tools in the garage. The fishing rods. The photos. All of it reduced to line items. I thought about the last time I saw him. Christmas. His condo downtown. He'd been distracted checking his phone. Selene, my granddaughter, had been quiet. Too quiet. When he walked me to the door that night, he'd said, Drive safe, Dad. Not I love you. Just drive safe. Like I was a client leaving a meeting. I should have known. The nurse returned. Soft footsteps. She picked up the phone. Sorry, I'll call you back. Then she turned toward me. I closed my eyes, slowed my breathing, let my body go slack. She checked the monitors, adjusted the IV. Her hand brushed my forehead, gentle and warm. Still with us, she murmured. You're a fighter. She had no idea. No idea I'd heard my son celebrate my death. No idea the man she thought unconscious had been awake for every word. When she left, I opened my eyes, stared at those 23 tiles again. Archer wanted me gone. He wanted my house, my money, my absence. He'd already started planning the estate sale before they'd confirmed my body. And in that moment, lying in a hospital bed held together by pins and prayers, I made a decision. I wouldn't tell them who I was. Not yet. Let them think I was another John Doe pulled from the wreckage. Let Archer make his plans. Let him celebrate. Because when you hear your own son rejoicing in your supposed death, there's no one hearing it. The nurse had no idea I'd just lost a son while gaining a reason to survive. They brought me in as John Doe. No ID, no wallet, no family rushing through hospital doors asking if I was alive. Just a body pulled from twisted metal and frozen earth, tagged and catalogued like evidence. Days became weeks. The pain settled into a dull, constant companion. Dr. Phillips, a man with silver hair and steady hands, called me a slow miracle. Most wouldn't have made it through the second night, he said one morning, flipping through charts. Broken ribs, punctured lung head trauma. You're one tough son of a gun. I wasn't tough. I was stubborn. There's a difference. Toughness fights. Stubbornness endures. They moved me from intensive care to a recovery wing after 10 days. Then once I could sit up without blacking out to Swedish rehabilitation services across town. The new room had a window. I could see the Space Needle in the distance, a thin gray line against the March sky. Seattle kept moving. Rain came and went. Life continued indifferent. The other patients had visitors, wives holding husbands' hands, children bringing balloons. There was noise, laughter, the messy, complicated presence of people who cared. No one came for me. The nurses were kind, but distant. They called me Mr. Doe, offered warm broth and sponge baths, and avoided the question in their eyes. Why hasn't anyone come for you? I didn't offer answers. I just nodded, smiled weakly, played the part of a man too broken to remember his own name. It wasn't hard. In a way, I didn't recognize myself anymore. The man I'd been the one who kept Elizabeth's coffee mug on the kitchen counter 5 years after she died. He'd gone down with that plane. What survived was something quieter, colder, more awake. Elizabeth would have understood why I stayed quiet. She always said I was too forgiving, that I let people walk over me. Maybe she was right. I'd forgiven Archer 100 small cruelties over the years, but forgiveness has limits. And hearing your son laugh at your death, that's where the line gets drawn. One afternoon, Nurse Lisa came in to change my bandages. She chatted as she worked, filling silence. They're saying it's going to be a busy spring for real estate, she said, unwrapping gauze from my head. My cousin's trying to buy a house in Queen Anne. Says the market's crazy. Some developer's been snapping up properties. Queen Anne, my neighborhood. I kept my face blank. That's so... Yeah, there's this beautiful old craftsman that just got listed. The owner died in that plane crash a few weeks ago. Sad, right? But the family's moving fast. Already under contract. Under contract. 2 weeks. He hadn't even waited for the search teams to finish? Tragic, I said softly. She nodded, finishing the fresh wrap. Life's short, you know? No, I thought. You never think it'll be your own son who can't wait for you to be gone. After she left, I sat by the window and watched the rain streak the glass. My body still hurt. Every breath was a reminder of bones knitting back together. But something else was happening beneath the pain. Something sharper. A plan, not revenge. I wasn't interested in petty payback or dramatic confrontations. What I wanted was simpler and far more permanent. I wanted control. I wanted to watch him think he'd won. And then I wanted to show him what it felt like to lose everything while the ground was still solid beneath your feet. No obituary, no funeral, no son holding my photo with tear-filled eyes. Just a signature on a property listing and a voice saying, finally. That's when I began to plan. Not revenge, something colder. Justice. 3 weeks in, they let me stand on my own. Not walk, not yet. Just stand, grip the rails, bear my own weight. Small steps, the therapist said. Progress. I asked for a mirror. She hesitated, but brought one. Handheld. Small. I wish I hadn't asked. The face staring back wasn't mine. The left side of my forehead was swollen dark purple, fading to sickly yellow. A scar ran from my hairline to my eyebrow, stitched tight. My nose sat crooked. A gap where a tooth used to be. Hollow cheeks from weeks of liquid meals. I looked like a man who'd been buried and dug back up. But my eyes, the same pale blue Elizabeth used to say reminded her of winter mornings. The same eyes that watched Archer take his first steps. The same eyes that had decided in that ICU not to die as a fool. I stared into them, held my own gaze. Andree Harper, I whispered. You're still here. And if I was still here, then I wasn't done. I handed the mirror back. I want to walk by next week. That's ambitious. I don't have time to be realistic. She didn't argue. Maybe she heard something in my voice that said not to. The next few days, I pushed harder. Every step was agony, but pain was just information now. It told me I was alive, and being alive meant I had work to do. I started paying attention to newspapers in the common room, to the television murmuring during meals, to fragments of conversation floating past. That's how I saw it. The Seattle Times real estate section folded on a chair. Someone had circled listings, and there in the middle of the page was a photo. My house. The Craftsman on Queen Anne, the one Elizabeth and I bought in '83, where we'd planted roses that first spring, where Archer learned to ride a bike. The listing called it a charming fixer-upper with vintage appeal. Charming, like it hadn't been a home, like it had just been waiting for someone with better taste to come along and gut it. $850,000. I stared at that photo until a nurse asked if I was all right. I told her I was fine. Just reading. But I wasn't fine. I was awake, fully furiously awake. Archer was selling my life, every memory, every moment, reduced to square footage and market value. He'd probably already cleared out the garage, thrown away the fishing rods, donated the tools, erased every trace of me like I'd been a tenant who'd overstayed. That's when I thought about Tobias. Tobias Foster, my lawyer for 20 years, the man who'd drawn up my will after Elizabeth died, the man who knew every clause, every contingency, every safeguard I'd put in place because I'd learned the hard way that family doesn't always mean loyalty. Tobias would know what to do. More importantly, Tobias would believe me. He'd know my voice, my signature, the details only I could know. I folded the newspaper, tucked it under my arm, walked slowly back to my room. That night, I didn't count ceiling tiles. I made lists. People I could trust. Assets Archer didn't know about. Loopholes he'd never thought to close. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning. Not revenge. Revenge was hot and quick and turned to ash. What I wanted was colder, more permanent. Justice. Justice meant letting him think he'd won. Letting him sell the house. Count the money. Build his plans on a foundation that didn't exist. And then when he was comfortable, when he was certain I'd pull the floor out from under him. Not with violence, not with shouting, just with the truth. The simple, undeniable truth that I wasn't dead. That every move he'd made was built on a lie. And that lies, no matter how convenient, always collapse. I closed my eyes. For the first time since the crash, I felt something other than pain. I felt purpose. 6 weeks after the crash, I drove for the first time. The rental car felt strange. My right leg was still braced, but I could press the pedals. The doctors had said to wait. I didn't listen. I had somewhere to be. Queen Anne on a Thursday afternoon. Tree-lined streets. Quiet. I'd lived here 40 years. Knew every corner. I parked across the street. 2 houses down. Far enough to blend in, close enough to see. The sign was the first thing I noticed. Under contract. White letters on red. Planted in the front yard like a flag on conquered territory. Professional. Final. Then I looked at the house itself. The paint was the same. Pale yellow with white trim. The porch still sagged slightly on the left. But the yard was wrong. The roses were gone. Elizabeth had planted them our first spring here. Climbers along the fence. Tea roses by the porch. She'd spent hours on her knees in the dirt, talking to them like children. Every June, they exploded into color. The neighbors would stop to compliment them. Now there was nothing, just gray stone chips, something a stager would call modern curb appeal. I gripped the steering wheel. A silver Prius pulled up. A young couple stepped out. Mid-30s. They looked excited, hopeful, the way people do when they think they're about to start a life. They stood on my porch. The woman knocked. The door opened. Archer. I hadn't seen him in person since Christmas. 3 months. He looked the same. Dark jeans, crisp button-down, sleeves rolled, hair styled perfectly. He smiled, shook hands, gestured them inside with easy confidence. He didn't look like someone in mourning. I watched him move, the way he held the door, tilted his head when the woman asked something. The same gestures I'd seen 1,000 times, at dinner tables, at graduations, at the hospital when Elizabeth was dying and he'd checked his phone more than he'd held my hand. He was my son, 42 years old. I'd taught him to tie his shoes, to ride a bike, to cast a line into the Snoqualmie River, paid for his college, co-signed his first business loan, and now he was walking strangers through my house like it had always been his to sell. I wanted to cross the street, to shout, but I didn't. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about watching, learning, understanding exactly what he thought he'd gotten away with. They were inside 20 minutes. I watched shadows move from room to room. Living room, kitchen, upstairs. When they came out, the couple looked pleased. The man shook Archer's hand again. They talked on the porch. Archer handed them something. Business cards, probably. The couple left. Archer stood alone on the porch. He pulled out his phone, checked it, smiled at something on the screen. He didn't look sad. He didn't look conflicted. He looked satisfied, like a man who'd been waiting for something to finally happen. I sat there until he left, watched him lock the door, walked to his black Audi. New, expensive, the kind of car you buy when you're expecting money. He drove past me without looking, didn't glance at the rental sedan. Why would he? As far as he knew, I was dead. I waited until he turned the corner. Then I started the engine. I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. But I needed to see more, to know what else he was doing, where else he was erasing me. He didn't look like someone in mourning. He looked like someone closing a deal. I followed the black Audi through the late afternoon traffic toward Ballard. Archer drove smoothly, confidently. There was someone in the passenger seat. Small frame. Dark hair pulled back. Celine, my granddaughter. I hadn't seen her in over a year. She'd been away at Western Washington University. Bellingham. Environmental science, if I remembered right. I wondered if she even knew I was supposed to be dead. The Audi turned into a public storage facility on 15th Avenue. I pulled over 2 blocks down and waited. Then I walked. The facility was one of those modern ones. Clean, well lit, security cameras everywhere. I kept my head down, ball cap low. Archer's unit was on the 2nd floor. I could hear them from the stairwell. Just toss it, Celine. None of this is worth keeping. But Dad, this is Grandpa's. It's junk. He hoarded junk. I stayed in the shadows, watched them haul boxes down to the dumpster below. Archer moved quickly, efficiently. Celine moved slower, hesitant. They left 20 minutes later. The Audi purred back toward the street. I waited until the sound faded. Then I walked to the dumpster. It was nearly full. Cardboard boxes, trash bags. I climbed the side. The smell hit me first. Mildew, old paper, gasoline. And then I saw it. The toolbox, oak, brass hinges, handmade. Elizabeth had given it to me the day we got married. Said every husband needed a good toolbox. I'd carried that thing through 3 moves, 2 renovations, and 47 years of fixing things that broke. It was sitting at the bottom of the dumpster. Corner dented. Lid half open. I reached down. My ribs screamed. I didn't care. I pulled it out. Wiped the dust off. The brass plate on the front was still there. Engraved. To Andree. Build us a life. E. My hands were shaking. I set it on the ground. Looked back into the dumpster. That's when I saw the frame. Our wedding photo. The glass was cracked. A long, jagged line ran right across Elizabeth's face. The frame was cheap now. Plastic. Someone had replaced the original years ago. But the photo was the same. Elizabeth in her simple white dress. Me in my father's too big suit. Both of us grinning like idiots outside the courthouse. I pulled it out, held it against my chest. The glass cut into my palm. I didn't feel it. He didn't just throw me away. He erased me. The toolbox, the photo, the roses, the house. Everything that said Andree Harper lived here. Andree Harper mattered. Gone. I stood there in the parking lot, holding a broken picture frame and a dented toolbox. The sky was getting dark. Ballard was quiet. And I realized something. This wasn't about money. This wasn't even about the house. This was about being forgotten. Erased. Written out of the story like I never existed. I looked down at Elizabeth's face behind the cracked glass. I whispered, I won't let him. I carried the toolbox and the photo back to my car, set them carefully in the trunk. My hands were still shaking. Not from fear, from rage. I made the call on a Thursday morning, week 12. My ribs had healed enough that I could breathe without wincing. The scars on my face had faded to pale lines. I could walk 3 miles without stopping. and I could finally think clearly. I dialed the number from memory. It rang twice. Foster and Associates. Tobias. A pause. Long. Heavy. Andree? His voice cracked. Just once. Tobias Foster didn't crack easily. He'd handled my father's estate, helped Elizabeth and me buy the Queen Anne house, sat with me in the hospital the night she died. 30 years of trust between us. Where are you? He said. Alive. Another pause. I need to see you, I said. Today, your office. I'll be here. I hung up. His office was above a French bakery in Belltown, second floor, narrow staircase. The smell of fresh bread and espresso followed me up. I used to love that smell. Today it just made my stomach turn. Tobias was standing in the doorway when I reached the top. He looked older, grayer, thinner. He stared at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was. He didn't say anything. Just stepped forward and pulled me into a hug. Hard. The kind that said I thought you were gone. I didn't cry. Neither did he. We just stood there for a moment. Then he let go. Come in. His office was small, tidy. Law books, framed diplomas, a window overlooking 2nd Avenue. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. I sat. He poured 2 glasses of water, set one in front of me, sat down. Tell me. So I did. I told him about the plane, the crash, waking up in ICU, hearing Archer's voice through the nurse's phone. Finally, time to liquidate everything. The laughter. I told him about staying silent, recovering as John Doe, watching my house go under contract, following Archer to the storage unit, finding the toolbox and the wedding photo in the dumpster. Tobias listened, didn't interrupt, didn't react, just listened. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbed his eyes. Jesus, Andree. I need to know how he did it, I said. How he sold my house. I'm not legally dead. There's no death certificate, no probate. Tobias nodded slowly. The living trust. I frowned. What? You set up a living trust 15 years ago, remember? After Elizabeth passed. You wanted to avoid probate, keep things simple. I did remember, vaguely. Paperwork, signatures. You're the truster, Tobias continued. You control the assets while you're alive. But you named Archer as your backup trustee. If you become incapacitated or presumed dead, he has temporary authority to manage the trust, including selling property. My chest tightened. So he didn't need a death certificate. Not immediately. The plane crash was public record. You were on the passenger manifest. Missing, presumed dead. That gave him enough legal standing to act as trustee. And the house? It's titled under the trust. He can list it, sign contracts, move assets. All technically legal, if you were actually dead. I stared at him, but I'm not. Tobias met my eyes. His voice was calm. Cold, lawyer calm. So he can sell the house without completing probate? I asked. Tobias nodded grimly. Technically, yes. As trustee, he has temporary control, but only if you're dead. He leaned forward. And you're not. Tobias leaned forward, hands flat on the desk. So here's what we do. I listened. First, we delay probate. I'll file a petition claiming there's uncertainty about your status. Request DNA verification, medical records, anything that buys time. How long? A few months, maybe longer if we're careful. I nodded. Second, he continued, we freeze everything. The trust, the house, any accounts Archer's touched. Once you formally declare you're alive, his authority as trustee ends immediately. Everything reverts back to you. And the sale? If the house hasn't closed yet, we can stop it. If it has, he paused, we sue. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraud. Whatever sticks. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Just clarity. There's something else, Tobias said. The airline settlement. I frowned. What settlement? You were on Flight 447. 12 survivors. 38 dead. The airline's already negotiating payouts to avoid lawsuits. Your name's on the manifest. How much are we talking? Could be significant. Depends on injuries, long-term care, loss of income. But you're a survivor with documented trauma. That carries weight. He slid a folder across the desk. I didn't open it. I want control, I said. Everything. The house. The accounts. The settlement. All of it in my name. Locked down. Tobias studied me. And Archer? He gets nothing. Nothing? Not a cent. Tobias leaned back. He didn't argue. Just watched me. What about Celine? He asked quietly. That stopped me. I thought of her at the storage unit. the way she'd hesitated before throwing my things away. But Dad, this is Grandpa's. She hadn't wanted to. She had just been obedient. A trust fund, I said, separate, in her name. She can access it when she's 25, or sooner if she needs it. But Archer can't touch it. Ever. Tobias nodded slowly, made a note. All right, he set his pen down, looked at me across the desk. You're planning something. It wasn't a question. No, I said. I'm planning not to be the fool who gave everything away and got thrown out. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms. You've changed. No. I stood, picked up the folder. I just stopped pretending. Tobias didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked at me like he was seeing someone he used to know and didn't anymore. Maybe he was right. I walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Tobias. Yeah? Keep this quiet. No one knows I'm alive. Not the airline, not the hospital, not Archer. He hesitated. Andree, you can't stay dead forever. I don't need forever. Just long enough. Long enough for what? I didn't answer. I left. Outside, the smell of bread from the bakery was stronger. Warm. Sweet. The street was busy. People walked past me like I was nobody, which technically I was. John Doe. Ghost. Dead man walking. I liked it that way. I sat in my car for a long time, watched the traffic on 2nd Avenue, thought about Archer sitting in his new office, spending money that wasn't his, living a life built on my death, not for much longer. I turned the key. The engine hummed. I had work to do. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, not at my old address in Queen Anne, not at the hospital. It came to a small one-bedroom apartment in South Hills, Spokane. Quiet neighborhood, tree-lined streets. Nobody knew me here. That's how I wanted it. I'd been living as a ghost for 16 weeks now. 4 months since the crash. 3 months since I'd heard Archer laugh. The envelope was thick. Official. Logo stamped in the corner. Cascade Airlines. Claims Department. I set it on the kitchen table. Stared at it for a long time. Then my phone rang. Mr. Harper? The voice was professional. Clipped. Male. This is Edward Reynolds. I'm calling on behalf of Cascade Airlines. We've finalized your settlement agreement. You should have received the documents today. I'm looking at them now. Good. I want to be clear about a few things. The settlement amount is $2 million. This figure reflects the severity of the incident. Specifically, our investigation revealed significant safety violations prior to Flight 447's departure. Maintenance logs were falsified. Protocol was ignored. I said nothing. Reynolds continued. In exchange for this settlement, you agree not to pursue further litigation. The terms include a strict confidentiality clause. You cannot disclose the amount or details to media, social platforms, or third parties outside your legal counsel. Understood. If you agree to the terms, sign page 12 and return it within 10 business days. Funds will be transferred within 30 days of receipt. I'll sign today. Thank you, Mr. Harper, and we're glad you survived. He hung up. I sat there, stared at the envelope. $2 million. I opened it, flipped through the pages, legal language, clauses, signatures. Page 12 had a line at the bottom. Claimant signature. I signed it. Then I called Tobias. It came, I said. The settlement? $2 million. A pause. Jesus. I need you to set up an account. Separate. Offshore if you have to. Nobody can trace it back to me. Not the airline. Not Archer. Nobody. I can do that. Give me a week. Make it 5 days. Andree, 5 days, Tobias. He sighed. All right. 5 days. I hung up. I stood at the window, looked out at the quiet street. A man walked his dog. A woman jogged past. Normal people. Normal lives. I thought about Archer. He used to say I was bad with money, that I had a scarcity mindset, that I never took risks, never invested, never thought big. I called it living responsibly. Elizabeth and I bought our house in cash. Saved for 30 years. No debt. No credit cards. We didn't have much, but we had enough. Archer hated that. He wanted flash, leverage, growth. He once told me I was playing poor when I didn't need to. I told him wealth wasn't about how much you spent. It was about what you kept. He'd laughed, said I sounded like a Hallmark card. Now here I was, holding an envelope worth more than he'd ever seen in his life. $2 million, and he had no idea. I folded the settlement agreement, slid it back into the envelope. Archer used to say I was bad with money, that I had a scarcity mindset. I called it living responsibly. And now I was sitting on more wealth than he'd ever dreamed of. My hand was inches from the cold steel door when someone grabbed my arm. I spun around, startled. A young nurse stood there, her eyes wide and urgent beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Her blue scrubs were crisp, her ID badge reading Piper Carter. But what struck me wasn't her name. It was the look on her face, pure fear. "Don't go in there," she whispered, her grip tight on my wrist. I tried to pull away. "My son is dying. I have to—" "No," she pulled me back. "You can't. Please." "Let go of me." My voice echoed down the empty hallway. "I need to see him." "Mr. Harrison," she said my name like she'd been waiting for me. "This is not a rescue operation. It's a trap." The word hit me like a punch. I froze. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes darted down the hallway. Then she grabbed my arm again and pulled me away from the operating room. "There's no time to explain. If they know you're here, if they see you. If who sees me, my son was in a car accident. They called me. They lied." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "Please, just trust me. Hide. Now." She dragged me to a door partially hidden behind a vending machine. No label, just plain wood. She pulled it open, revealing a dark supply room. Shelves with boxes, the smell of cleaning chemicals. "Get in," she hissed. "I can't just—" "Get in." She shoved me inside. "Lock the door. Whatever you hear, don't make a sound. Don't come out until I come back. Understand what's happening to my son?" But she was already closing the door. Her face appeared one last time in the narrowing gap. "Just hide, and don't let them know you're here." The door clicked shut. Her footsteps retreated down the hallway. Silence. I stood in the pitch-black room, my heart hammering. My hand fumbled for the lock, twisting it shut. What the hell was happening? A trap. She said it was a trap, but that didn't make sense. Porter was in an accident. The hospital called me. Dr. Reed was operating right now. Unless they lied. But why? I pressed my back against the cold wall. Should I trust her? A stranger who just shoved me into a closet? But the fear in her eyes had been real. Porter. Was he really in that operating room? Was he really hurt? Or was something else happening behind that door? I crept forward in the darkness until I found the door again. There was a thin crack between the door and frame. I pressed my face close. I could see a sliver of the hallway. The bright lights. Operating room 3 across the hall. The red light still glowing. And I waited. 1 minute passed. 2, 5. Every second felt like an hour. My legs ached. My breath sounded too loud. What was I doing? My son could be dying, and I was hiding because a stranger told me to. But something in my gut told me to stay. 10 minutes. The longest 10 minutes of my life. And then I heard it. The soft hiss of hydraulic doors. The operating room was opening. I pressed my eye to the crack, hardly daring to breathe, and my heart stopped. I became a ghost in my own city. June bled into July. I drove down from Spokane 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Parked in different spots. Wore a baseball cap, sunglasses, kept my head down. Seattle was full of invisible people. I was just one more. Archer's new office was on the 43rd floor of Columbia Center, downtown. Glass and steel. The kind of building that screams success before you even walk through the door. I watched him arrive every morning around 8:30. Black Audi. Freshly washed. He'd hand the keys to the valet, adjust his tie stride into the lobby like he owned the place. Maybe he thought he did. I followed him once. Stayed 3 people behind in the elevator. Got off on 42, took the stairs up 1 flight. Peeked through the glass door. Harper Development Group. Big letters, brushed steel, logo I'd never seen before. His receptionist sat behind a white marble desk. Young, polished. The kind of hire that cost money. I didn't go in, just watched. Archer met clients in a corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows. View of Elliott Bay. I could see him through the glass, gesturing, laughing, closing deals. He looked good, confident, successful. Like a man who'd finally stepped out of his father's shadow. I wondered if that's what he told himself at night. I watched him for weeks. Saw him take clients to lunch at waterfront restaurants. Saw him shake hands outside construction sites. Saw him leave the office late, phone pressed to his ear, pacing the sidewalk, like a man with too much to do and not enough time. He was building something. An empire, a reputation, a life. All of it funded by money he didn't have yet. I did the math. The office space alone Columbia Center. 43rd floor had to cost $15,000, maybe $20,000 a month. The Audi was $75,000 easy. Add the receptionist, the marketing, the suits, the lunches. He'd blown through at least $250,000, maybe more. And technically he hadn't inherited a cent. The house hadn't closed. Probate hadn't finalized. The trust was frozen in legal limbo exactly like Tobias planned. Archer was spending money that didn't exist yet, betting on my death, betting on a future where I stayed buried. One afternoon in mid-July, I sat in a coffee shop across from Columbia Center, watched him through the window. He was on his phone laughing, probably a client, probably closing another deal. He looked happy, not grieving, not mourning, not even pretending, just happy. I thought about the toolbox in my trunk, the wedding photo with the cracked glass, the roses torn out of the front yard. He'd erased me, not just from his life, from his memory, and now he was building a new life on top of the old one, on top of me. I finished my coffee, left a 5 on the table, walked out. The sun was setting over the Sound. The city smelled like salt and exhaust. People rushed past me heading home, heading to dinner, heading somewhere that mattered. I stood on the corner and watched Archer's office light go dark. Then I got in my car and drove back to Spokane. He was spending money he didn't have, building a life on my grave. But I'd learned something in those 16 weeks of silence. Graves aren't always permanent. I saw them together on a Thursday afternoon, late July. The heat was heavy, sticky. I was parked across from a Starbucks in Capitol Hill when Archer's Audi pulled up to the curb. Celine was in the passenger seat. I hadn't seen her since the storage unit. 2 months ago. She looked thinner now, tired. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore an old sweatshirt, faded jeans. She didn't look like a college student on summer break. She looked like someone trying to disappear. Archer was talking. I could see his mouth moving, hands gesturing, sharp, aggressive. Celine sat still, arms crossed, staring straight ahead. I leaned forward, watched. Archer's face was tight, frustrated. He jabbed a finger toward her, then toward himself, then out the window like he was pointing at the whole damn world and blaming it for something. Celine didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't even look at him, just stared at the dashboard. I knew that posture. I'd lived it. The crossed arms, the silence, the blank stare that meant, I'm not here. I'm somewhere safe, somewhere you can't reach. Archer kept talking, louder now. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew the rhythm, the cadence. Control, blame, guilt. You're not working hard enough. You're wasting opportunities. You don't appreciate what I've done for you. It was the same speech he'd given me 100 times, and now he was giving it to her. Celine turned her head, looked out the window, away from him. Archer slammed his hand on the steering wheel. She flinched. Not much, just a small involuntary jerk of her shoulders. But I saw it, and something in my chest cracked. The conversation lasted another 5 minutes. Archer kept talking. Celine kept staring out the window. Then she opened the door, got out, walked into the Starbucks without looking back. Archer sat there for a moment, rubbed his face. Then he drove off. I stayed, waited. Celine came out 10 minutes later with a coffee. She didn't drink it, just held it. Stood on the sidewalk like she didn't know where to go next. She looked so small. I wanted to get out of the car, walk over, say something. I'm alive. I'm here. You're not alone. But I didn't. Not yet. Because if I revealed myself now, before everything was in place, Archer would know. He'd lawyer up. He'd spin the story. He'd turn Celine into a pawn. And I couldn't let that happen. So I sat there, watched her finish her coffee, watched her throw the cup away, watched her walk down the street, hands shoved in her pockets, shoulders hunched. She looked like someone carrying a weight she didn't know how to put down. I started the car, followed her from a distance. She walked for 20 minutes. No destination, just walking, like she was trying to outrun something that lived inside her head. Eventually, she sat down on a bench in Volunteer Park, pulled out her phone, stared at it, didn't type anything, just stared. I parked 2 blocks away, watched through the rearview mirror. She sat there for an hour. Then she got up, walked back the way she came. I didn't follow her home. I already knew what I needed to know. They didn't talk much. Celine kept her arms crossed. Archer gestured a lot. I couldn't hear a single word, but I knew that rhythm. It was the same rhythm he'd used on me. Celine didn't argue, just looked away. The Audi drove off, and I followed from a distance. I knew about the dinner 3 days in advance. Archer's assistant had called Elliot's Oyster House to confirm a reservation. 7 o'clock, table for 2, patio seating, waterfront view. I'd been watching long enough to know his patterns. Thursday nights were for clients. Fridays were personal. This was a Tuesday. That meant business. I arrived at 6:30, walked in like I belonged there, ordered a bourbon at the bar, waited. The patio was half empty. Summer tourists. A couple celebrating an anniversary. A guy on his laptop nursing a beer. I took a corner table. Back to the wall. View of the entrance. The server came by. I ordered oysters. Told her I was waiting for someone who wasn't coming. She gave me a sympathetic smile and left me alone. Archer arrived at 7 sharp. He wasn't alone. The man with him was mid-40s. Trim suit, expensive watch, confident handshake. I recognized him from a photo Tobias had shown me weeks ago. Nathan Pierce, Archer's lawyer. They sat 3 tables away, close enough to hear if I leaned back and stayed quiet. I stayed very quiet. They ordered drinks, talked about the Mariners, about traffic, about the heat wave. Small talk. The kind that meant the real conversation hadn't started yet. Then Nathan leaned forward. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Archer glanced around, lowered his voice. You mean my father. I mean the possibility that he's not as dead as we thought. Archer's jaw tightened. He's dead. The plane went down. No one survives a crash like that without being found. Most don't, Nathan said carefully. But some do. And if he does show up alive, coherent, ready to reclaim his assets, we need a plan B. Archer didn't respond right away. He picked up his glass, took a long drink. What kind of plan B? Nathan set his menu down, folded his hands. We challenge his competency. Archer frowned. What? Think about it. He survives a catastrophic plane crash, massive head trauma, months of recovery, no contact with family, no attempt to reach out. That's not normal behavior. That's someone who's not mentally stable. Archer stared at him. Nathan continued. If he suddenly resurfaces, we file for a conservatorship hearing, argue that he's not capable of managing his own affairs, present medical records, testimony from doctors. We make the case that he needs supervision, legal oversight. And who supervises him? Nathan smiled, thin, professional. You do. Archer leaned back, looked out at the water. That's aggressive. It's protective, Nathan corrected. You've been managing the estate in good faith. You've made investments, built a business. If he comes back and tries to undo all of that, it's not just unfair to you, it's financially irresponsible. A judge will see that. Archer was quiet for a long time. Then he said very softly, he can't just show up and take everything back. No, Nathan agreed. He can't. Archer looked at him. I've built this. The office, the clients, the reputation. I've put everything into it. I know. I can't tear it all down just because he had the nerve not to die. Nathan didn't flinch. You won't have to. They sat in silence. The server came by, took their order, left. Archer stared at his hands. What if he's fine? What if there's nothing wrong with him? Nathan shrugged. Then we make something wrong. Psychological evaluation, competency test. We bring in experts. We build a case. It's not about the truth, Archer. It's about the narrative. Archer nodded slowly. All right. Let's do it. If he shows up, we fight. Nathan raised his glass. To preparation. Archer clinked his glass against Nathan's. To survival. I didn't move. I didn't shake. Because I'd been preparing for exactly this confirmation. Not just that he was ambitious. I knew that. Not just that he'd rewritten the story. I'd anticipated that. But that he saw me as an inconvenience. An obstacle. Not a father. That was the last lock clicking shut. I stood, left cash on the table. Walked out through the side door. Behind me, Archer and Nathan laughed about something. I didn't look back. I walked into his office on a Friday afternoon. No appointment. No warning. Just me, a sealed envelope, and 5 months of patience finally reaching its end. The receptionist looked up from her desk. Ashley, young, professional. The kind of polished competence that costs money. Can I help you? I'm here to see Archer. Do you have an appointment? No. She hesitated, glanced at her computer screen. I'm sorry, but Mr. Harper is in a meeting. I kept walking. Sir, you can't. I opened the door. Archer was on the phone, leaning back in his leather chair, feet propped on the corner of his glass desk. View of Elliott Bay behind him. He looked relaxed, confident, successful. Then he saw me. The phone slipped from his hand. His face went white, not pale, white, like every drop of blood had drained straight out of his body. His mouth opened. No sound came out. I closed the door behind me, stood there, waited. He stared at me like I was something his mind couldn't process. A glitch, a ghost, a mistake in the code of reality. Hello, Archer. His lips moved, finally sound. You're how alive, I finished. Yeah, turns out the plane crash didn't quite finish the job. He stood up, slow, like his legs didn't trust themselves. Dad, you look good, I said, calm, even, healthy, though I don't imagine your conscience is. He flinched. I can explain. Can you? I stepped closer. He stepped back, hit the edge of his desk. Dad, listen, I thought you were dead. Everyone thought you were dead. The airline, the hospital, the nurse's phone, I said quietly. 2 floors below ICU. You were on speaker. He froze. You remember that call, Archer? The one where you said, finally, time to liquidate everything. Then laughed. His face crumbled, not into shame, into fear. I was in shock, he said quickly. I didn't mean, you meant every word. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the envelope, set it on his desk. He stared at it like it might explode. What is that? A formal notice, I said. My lawyer will be in touch shortly. He reached for it, hesitated, then picked it up, hands shaking. What does it say? I looked at him. Really looked. Tried to see the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, to fish, to shoot a basketball, the kid who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides. I couldn't find him. It says I'm alive, I said, and that I control every cent you were hoping to inherit. The envelope slipped from his fingers, fell to the floor. You can't. I can, I already have. The house, frozen, sales void. Tobias handled it weeks ago. The trust reverts to me the moment I declare myself alive, which I did, yesterday. His breath came faster, shallow. Dad, please, I've built something here. I've invested everything. My money. Our money. No, I said, voice hard now, cold. My money. My house. My life you tried to sell off piece by piece. He stared at me, and for just a second I saw it. Not regret, anger. He was angry at me for surviving, for coming back, for ruining his plans. You don't understand, he said, voice shaking. I had to move fast. The market was... You threw my toolbox in a dumpster. He stopped. Elizabeth's toolbox. The one she gave me the day we got married. You threw it away like garbage. His mouth opened, closed. The wedding photo. The roses. 47 years of my life, Archer. You erased it. I didn't? You did. I turned toward the door. Wait, he said, voice cracking. Why now? Why not just... Come back. File the paperwork. Why show up here like this? I stopped, looked back at him. He was standing behind that glass desk, hands braced on the surface, trying to look strong, failing. Because I wanted to look you in the eye, Archer, and see if there was anything left of my son in there. He didn't answer. I didn't wait for one. I walked out, left him standing there, holding that envelope like a live wire. Behind me, I heard him sit down, hard. Ashley was standing by her desk, staring. I nodded to her. Have a good weekend. I took the elevator down 43 floors, walked out into the August heat, got in my car, and drove away. I didn't wait for his response. I left him sitting behind that glass desk, holding the letter like a live wire. For 3 days I heard nothing. No calls, no lawyers, just silence. And then on Wednesday morning, an email arrived. Subject line, is it really you? I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. Grandpa, I don't know if I'm allowed to write to you. Dad said you weren't well, but I think I saw you. If it's really you, I just wanted to say I'm glad. Celine. I read it 4 times. Then I wrote back. Celine, it's me. Do you want to meet? Grandpa? Her reply came 10 minutes later. Yes, just tell me when and where. I thought about the girl I'd seen in the Audi, arms crossed, staring out the window. The girl who'd hesitated before throwing my things into the dumpster. I typed, Espresso Vivace, Capitol Hill, Tuesday, 4 p.m. Her response was immediate. A single heart emoji. I sat back, stared at the screen. 3 days since I'd walked into Archer's office and shattered the life he'd built on my grave. 3 days of waiting to see what he'd do. Call Tobias, hire a lawyer. Try to challenge my competency like Nathan had suggested. Nothing, just silence. And now this. Celine, the one person who hadn't chosen sides, who hadn't spent my money or sold my house or erased my memory. She'd just been caught in the middle. I thought about the last time I'd seen her. Over a year ago, Thanksgiving. She'd been quiet, polite, distant. I'd thought she was just growing up, pulling away. Now I wondered if she'd been pulling away from him. I looked at the email again. I just wanted to say I'm glad. She was glad I was alive. Not shocked, not angry, not confused. Glad. That one word sat in my chest like a weight and a lifeline at the same time. I'd spent 5 months planning, watching, waiting, building a case against Archer, but I hadn't planned for this. for the possibility that someone might actually want me back. Tuesday was 6 days away. 6 days to figure out what to say to a 20-year-old girl who'd spent the last 5 months thinking her grandfather was dead. I called Tobias. Andree, I'm meeting Celine next week. A pause. How'd that happen? She emailed me, said she's glad I'm alive. That's good, Andree. That's really good. I'm nervous. Be honest with her. She deserves that. He paused. But don't tell her everything. Not yet. She doesn't need to carry that weight. I know. I hung up. She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a water glass. When she turned and saw me, her face didn't register shock, just recognition. Hi, Grandpa. I walked over. She stood. We hugged. Awkward. Arms not quite sure where to go, but real. The server came by. Name tag said Katie. Coffee, black, I said. Lemon tart and a chai latte, Celine added. Katie left. We sat in careful silence. You look different, Celine said finally. I touched the scar along my temple. I am different. She looked down at her hands. I didn't know if... Dad said you weren't well, that you were in some kind of facility, that we shouldn't bother you. I know, but I saw you, outside the storage unit, and then again on Capitol Hill a few weeks ago. I kept thinking about it. She looked up. And then Dad came home last week, shaken, locked himself in his office. I went to see him. I figured. Katie returned with our order, set it down, left. Celine picked up her fork, didn't eat, just held it. Why didn't you tell anyone you were alive? I took a sip of coffee. Because I needed to understand what was happening, what had been done, and who was responsible. She set the fork down. Dad thought you were dead. He hoped I was. She flinched, but didn't argue. I leaned forward. Celine, I've set up a trust fund in your name. You'll have access when you turn 25, or sooner if you need it for school, housing, medical expenses. It's protected. No one else can touch it. Not your father, not anyone. She stared at me. Why me? Why give me anything? I looked at her. This girl who'd hesitated before throwing my toolbox away, who'd worn a locket with my photo inside, who'd sat silent while her father ranted. Because when I disappeared, I said quietly, you were the only one who noticed. Her eyes filled, fast, sharp. She tried to blink it back. I missed you, she whispered. So much, but I didn't know how to say it. Dad made everything hard. I know. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away. I didn't want to believe he was happy you were gone. But I saw things. The way he moved so fast. Sold the house. Started the business. Like you were just gone. Not mourned. Just gone. He was building a life on my grave, I said. But I'm not in it. She nodded, took a shaky breath. What happens now? Now you finish school. You live your life. You don't carry his weight. What about you? I'll be fine. And Dad, he'll have to figure that out himself. We sat for a while longer, talked about smaller things, her classes, her friends, normal things, things a grandfather and granddaughter should talk about. Before we left, Celine reached across the table, took my hand. You came back? She whispered. I never left, I said. And this time when we hugged, it wasn't awkward at all. The envelope arrived on a Thursday in November. Archer was on a call when Ashley's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Harper's certified delivery. Needs a signature. He stepped down. A courier in a blue uniform held out the envelope. Logo in the corner, Foster & Associates. Archer's stomach tightened. He signed, took it, closed his office door. He stared at the envelope. Tobias Foster, his father's lawyer. He'd known this was coming since the moment his father walked into this office 3 months ago. Pale, scarred, alive. He opened it. The letter was short, legal, cold. To Archer Harper. This is formal notification that the living trust established by Andree Harper has been amended effective immediately. All assets previously under your temporary management have reverted to Andree Harper's sole control. The Queen Anne property sale has been voided. All financial accounts have been frozen and transferred. A trust fund has been established for Celine Harper, accessible at age 25 with provisions for early release under specific conditions. You are not named as a trustee or beneficiary. The remaining estate has been allocated to the June Mallow Foundation for Transitional Women, a registered nonprofit organization. You are entitled to no inheritance, no claims, no further correspondence. Tobias Foster-esque. Archer read it twice. The words didn't change. No inheritance, no claims, no further correspondence. He set the letter down. His hands were shaking. Part of him wanted to call Tobias, demand an explanation, threaten legal action, but he knew it wouldn't matter. This wasn't a challenge. This was a conclusion. He sat there for a long time, long after the office had emptied, long after Ashley had said goodnight, long after the city lights turned the windows into mirrors. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a small photo, bent at the corners, faded. Andree, Elizabeth, Archer at 7 years old, grinning with a gap-toothed smile, standing in front of the Queen Anne house, his mother's hand on his shoulder, his father holding a fishing rod. He didn't remember that day, but he'd kept the photo anyway. He stared at it now, not with nostalgia, but with an emptiness that finally had a shape. He set the photo on the desk, next to the letter. 2 pieces of paper, 2 versions of his life. One that used to be, one that never would be again. The security guard knocked, asked if he was all right. Archer said he was fine. The guard left. Archer stayed, because there was nowhere else to go. I gave Archer 2 weeks. 2 weeks to process, to grieve, to accept. I didn't contact him, didn't chase. I'd said what needed saying. The rest was silence. And in that silence, I found myself driving back to Queen Anne. Not for him, for me. It was October, early fall. The trees had started to turn, gold and orange and deep red. I parked 2 houses down, same spot I'd used months ago when I first watched Archer sell my life piece by piece. The house looked different now, lived in. Toys in the front yard, a plastic slide, a tricycle, chalk drawings on the driveway. Connor and Olivia, the couple who'd toured the house with Archer, they'd made it theirs. A child ran out, maybe 3 years old, blonde hair, bright red jacket, laughing. I watched from the car, and I thought about Archer, not the man in the glass office, not the one who'd crumpled a legal letter in his fist. I thought about the boy, 7 years old, gap-toothed, running through the sprinkler in this exact yard, laughing so hard he couldn't breathe, teaching him to shoot a basketball, right there, on the driveway, the way he'd missed 20 times and then finally make one and scream like he'd won the championship. And him at 16, standing in the kitchen, yelling, I can't wait to leave this place. Elizabeth quiet folding dish towels. Both memories lived in this lawn, both versions of him, and neither of them belonged to me anymore. I got out of the car. The roses were gone. Elizabeth's roses, the ones she'd planted along the side fence, pink, white, yellow. Now there were shrubs, low, neat, practical. It didn't hurt. It didn't need to. This wasn't my house anymore. But it would always be the place I became things no one expected. A husband, a father, a widower, and finally a man who chose to stop disappearing. I pulled out the photo, the same one Archer had in his desk. The 3 of us. Andree, Elizabeth, Archer at 7, grinning, standing in front of this house. I looked at it one last time. Then I walked up the driveway, set it gently under the mailbox, placed a small stone on top. I didn't leave a note, just a truth. I was here, and I don't need to prove it anymore. I walked back to my car, got in, started the engine. Olivia was on the porch, watching her child chase a ball. She didn't see me. I was a ghost again. But this time by choice. I pulled away, turned the corner, and I didn't look back. She showed up on a Saturday in December. No warning, just a knock and Selene standing there with a paper bag from the deli. Just me, she said. She didn't ask if it was okay anymore. She just came. We ate lunch at the small kitchen table. Sandwiches, apples, dark chocolate she'd brought because she remembered I liked it. How's school? Good. I'm taking art history. It's harder than I thought. That's the kind of learning worth having. She smiled. I got an email from a gallery in Portland. They're looking for interns. It's close enough I could still visit. You should do it. So I'd be leaving Bellingham? You're not leaving, I said. You're moving forward. There's a difference. She looked out the window. What if I miss you? You will. Will you miss me? Every day. After lunch, we went to the small patio. I'd put a few pots out there. Herbs, basil, rosemary. Selene picked up the watering can, tipped it over the basil. You actually use these. Mostly I just like watching them grow. She set the can down. Grandpa, do you hate him? I looked at her. No. Why not? Because hate takes energy, and I'd rather spend mine on you. She was quiet. When I was your age, I said, I thought healing meant forgetting. Moving on. Now I think it just means telling the truth over and over until saying it doesn't hurt anymore. Even when no one believes you, especially then. She looked at me. I believe you. I know. Before she left, she hugged me tight. Not polite, not brief. She clung. I'm proud of you, I whispered. She held on tighter. When she let go, she said, You changed everything you know. I shook my head. No, I just stopped pretending. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too. She waved once, drove away. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't moved, but because I was full. And sometimes that's what peace is. Not the absence of pain, just the moment when the pain finally has nowhere left to go. I stood on the patio for a while longer. I thought about Archer, about the boy with the gap-toothed grin, about the man who'd crumpled a legal letter. I thought about Elizabeth, about the toolbox, about the roses. I thought about the plane, about the nurse's phone, about the voice that said, finally. And I realized something. I'd spent 5 months coming back to life, and now finally, I was living it. Looking back at my true story, I realize, don't be like me. Don't wait until you're 71 and presume dead to stop pretending. Here's what I learned. Grandpa stories like mine shouldn't exist, but they do. Because we stay silent when we should speak. We forgive when we should protect. God doesn't give us second chances so we can waste them being polite. He gives them so we can finally tell the truth. This is my true story. A father who heard his son celebrate his death. A grandfather who chose silence over rage. A man who learned that healing isn't forgetting, it's telling the truth until it stops hurting. Grandpa's stories aren't always about cookies and fishing. Sometimes they're about survival, about choosing yourself when no one else will. My advice, don't wait, don't pretend, don't disappear. The best revenge isn't what you take, it's the life you build when they think you're gone. Grandpa stories like this true story remind us it's never too late to reclaim your life. What would you do if you heard your child celebrate your death? Share below. If this moved, you subscribe and share with someone who needs to hear it. And I spotted my daughter at South Station in Boston